Welcome to So-Called Discoveries, where we discuss stories, knowledge, and insights from somewhere and try to learn something. My name is Anthony Ozzie. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Paul Thomas from Plum Health. Dr. Paul Thomas is a board-certified family medicine physician practicing in Corktown, Detroit. His practice is Plum Health DPC, a direct primary care service that is the first of its kind in Detroit and Wayne County. His mission is to deliver affordable, accessible healthcare services in Detroit and beyond. He has been featured on WDIV-TV Channel 4, WXYZ Channel 7, Crain's Detroit Business, and CBS Radio. He has been a speaker at TEDxDetroit and is a graduate of Wayne State University School of Medicine, and now a clinical assistant professor. Finally, he is the author of 2 books, Direct Primary Care, The Cure for Our Broken Healthcare System, and Startup DPC, How to Start and Grow Your Direct Primary Care Practice. I really appreciated having Dr. Thomas on to discuss the model of direct primary care and the story of how he started Plum Health in Detroit. I hope that you enjoy it as well. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Paul Thomas from Plum Health. Dr. Paul Thomas, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I would definitely want to dig into your background and talk a little bit about the story about how you started Plum Health. But could you begin by just telling the audience what Plum Health is and how it's different from the typical experience that someone in the United States might have when being in a doctor's office, both in terms of the experience and in terms of the model of how it works?
Sure. To start, we believe that healthcare should be affordable and accessible for everyone. And so everything that we do leads to that mission. And the experience is different for our patients because they're paying this monthly membership, usually $55 or $75 a month for adults and about $15 a month for kids. And with that membership, they can come see us anytime they need to. We guarantee a same day or next day appointment. And then they can also call, text, or email us anytime. And we typically respond, if not right away, then within 24 hours to any request. If it's urgent and you call us, I always answer the phone after hours, and there's always somebody at the office 9 to 5 to answer the phone. So how it looks different is the payment is different. You're paying for this monthly medical service rather than paying an insurance company to pay your primary care doctor. And then it feels different because you have a doctor at your reach, at your fingertips. You can text them or send an email, and you know that you can get an appointment within a day or two rather than maybe at an insurance-based or a fee-for-service doctor. It might take a week or 2 weeks or a month even. The typical wait time to see a family physician in the United States is 24 days. So when you can guarantee a same day or next day appointment, that's a big difference.
Okay. And is there the main difference, like you said, in terms of the payment is that they're not going through, the patient is not going through an insurance company. They're paying you directly. So you don't accept any form of insurance, right? That's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. We don't bill or use insurance at all. We do recommend that you have some form of insurance in case you have a heart attack, stroke, or a motor vehicle accident. We're not going to be able to cover your cost if you go into the hospital. What we are able to do is give you excellent primary care services, and that can cover just about 90% of your healthcare needs during your lifetime. It's a lot of primary care services that people need. Medication management for diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, treatment for urgent care things like STDs, cuts, flu, cough, cold, etc. We take care of all of those things in our office.
And because you're being paid directly by the patient, that also impacts the costs to the patient for other things like their, if they're, for certain medications or if they're doing certain things at the hospital, right? Could you talk a little bit about how the fact that you're not going through an insurance company, how that impacts those types of things?
Sure. Yeah, we tend to save our members a lot of money on their meds, labs, and imaging services. It's an ask to have somebody pay us, that $55 a month or $75 a month membership. So we want to make everything really worth it for them. So, for example, we'll wholesale blood pressure medications or antibiotics. Let's say you get bronchitis, you need a Z-Pak. They might charge you $20 at the pharmacy. It's $2 at our office. So we'll save you 90% on that one medication. Or if you are worried about anemia, rather than going to the hospital and receiving a charge of $120 to check your complete blood count, we check it for about $4.50 at our office. So again, like a 95% savings on that one lab. And that holds true across a broad range of meds and labs. We end up saving our patients tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in their meds, labs, and imaging services.
Okay. And so this next question is a little bit, it's not about Plum Health in particular, but it is certainly relevant to the model. I guess, how is it that, why is it? Is it just because you're not dealing with an insurance company? Like, what is it exactly that's making it such that for certain things it's so much less expensive for a patient to get, for example, a certain medication from you than if the insurance company was involved?
Exactly. So if you go to a retail pharmacy, in that name is the word retail, and we all know about retail markups. We know that clothing companies like Brooks Brothers or Banana Republic might get things made for a few dollars for like a sweatshirt out of somewhere like Vietnam or Taiwan or something, and they sell it for $25 or $200 at their store. We all know that happens. It's the same thing with a retail markup at like CVS or Walgreens. You know that these meds actually cost like $1, but when you buy it, there's a retail markup at CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, Target, like whichever big box pharmacy you're using, they're using the same wholesaler that we are, and then they're marking it up to make a profit. We're not marking it up because the only money that we make is from our members' membership costs. The rest is all like pass through. We try to pass through savings on those labs and medications to make the membership valuable for our patients. So that's the big difference. The other thing is that, like, the way doctors are reimbursed, you typically make $40 as a physician to see a patient in the office. And so to make a high salary, you have to see like 25, 35 patients in a day to make about $200,000 to $300,000 a year. Average salary for a family doctor is about $200,000. And so it incentivizes physicians to see as many patients as you can in as short a time period as possible. And in our model, because we have consistent revenue coming in from multiple members, we just really focus on taking care of 400 or 450 or maybe even 500 members and keeping those people really happy with the service and catering to their concerns. And that's how we stay afloat financially. That's a real big difference. We're not getting paid per visit. We're getting paid for keeping somebody happy and healthy over the long term.
Yeah, and that flows nicely into the second part about when we started. I asked you about how it's different. The second part that you mentioned was the experience and that sort of how that impacts the relationship with the physician. And I think you were pretty much starting to talk about that already. Could you elaborate on how, because your model is different and that changes the incentives, that changes the relationship, or how does that play out in your experience?
Yeah, a lot of doctors in the fee-for-service or insurance-based model will hide behind their front desk. What I mean by that is, like, if you call a doctor's office, you'll often hit a receptionist, then they'll pass you to the medical assistant, and then they'll pass you to the nurse, and the nurse will write down your question on a piece of paper or put it in the doctor's inbox, and they might get back to you a few days or a week later. With our model, we're really incentivized to be customer facing. So we want our patients to text us or email us or call the office, and we'll get back to you very quickly, if not right away, if you text or email, so that you have a great experience in our office and want to continue to be a member. We're only successful as our members are happy with the service, because if we don't give a great service, or somebody feels like they were skipped over or something, or given less than their full attention to the doctor, they can just as easily go to another medical office or go to another urgent care or go to a massage therapist and get the time and attention from somebody else. And we know that, so we want to give excellent service every time for our patients. I mean, that's a goal, and we consistently meet that goal, and that's why we've been successful so far.
When did you first become interested in this model before Plum Health existed?
Yeah, so I'm in my last year of med school. It's about 2012, and I'm actually driving back from a residency interview in Minneapolis at the University of Minnesota, and my friend sent me a podcast link, and I listened to a podcast. That's why I love doing podcast interviews, because you never know who's listening or who you might inspire. So thanks for having me on the show. This is really wonderful. And this is one of the ways I pay it forward. So I heard about this idea in 2012, but I thought, I'm going to go into residency. I kind of want to be a faculty member, like a teacher, where I see patients half of my time, and the other half of my time I teach residents and teach students. And that's what I thought I was going to do. But by the time I got to the end of my residency, which is about 3 years long, I noticed how a lot of my physician colleagues were feeling burned out. A lot of our attendings were feeling burned out. There were mandates to see more patients in a less amount of time. And there were a lot of regulations and paperwork and overhead and all the things that make doctors frustrated. And so I knew I was not going to be happy in that system. And I went back to that idea of direct primary care. And so I drove out in my last year of residency. I wrote a business plan. I visited 2 mentors that I met along the way, and I drove out to their practices, one in Denver and one in Kansas. And I really kicked the tires on their practices, to use an auto industry analogy. And I loved what they were doing. They seemed really happy and satisfied. And so I emulated what they were doing, and I brought it back to Detroit. We were the first practice in Detroit in Wayne County, and the second direct primary care practice in Michigan. So that's like a point of pride for me. I love that we were an early adopter, and that's helped us be successful as well, because we're something new, people are interested, and it's helped us to succeed.
So it was right out of residency you started Plum Health?
Yeah, exactly. So I graduated June 30th, 2016. July 1st is your first day out of residency. And then I started my practice like November 11th or November 9th, 2016. So in my last year and a half of residency, I worked at an urgent care. In my first year and a half out of residency, I worked at an urgent care, like 2 days a week. So a weekday and a weekend day. And then when I felt confident in my business plan, I had like a few people sign up online. I started doing Plum Health, working 4 days a week for Plum Health. I leased out an office in January of 2017. I was doing only house calls in November and December of 2016. And then I had 20, 30 people sign up by the end of January, and I felt like I had some really good momentum. So I worked at an urgent care for like the next 9 or 10 months. And then once I hit like 150 patients of my own at Plum Health, I left the urgent care gig and pivoted full-time into Plum Health, and that felt great.
Awesome. And so the location that you're in now in Corktown, was that your first location?
No, originally, as I mentioned, I was making house calls, and then I leased out a one-room office from a school for digital technology, which was great because they had great Wi-Fi and a nice printer. But it was located in an old police precinct in Southwest Detroit at 21st and Verner. And it was a great location to start, right behind the old Michigan Central Station, the old train station, adjacent to a ton of great restaurants and great, Mexican food options. And I met a lot of great patients, met a lot of great people, had a lot of great business contacts. President Joe Biden, when he was vice president, came through and gave like a farewell address at that location while we were there. So I got to see Joe Biden, shake hands with him, which was really interesting, along with the mayor. The woman who ran that school was really well connected. So there were a lot of interesting people who came through that facility. And then about 2.5 years later, we signed the lease for this Corktown office. It was like a shell of a building when we signed the lease. They built out the building and white boxed it. Our general contractor took over and built out the beautiful space that we have today, 1,700 square feet, with enough capacity for like 3 doctors and 400 and 500 patients per each physician. So we're in a really good position right now.
Yeah, that neighborhood, that whole Corktown area has been experiencing a lot of growth and development, especially like there's the big thing in the past few years was Ford making their big stake in that area. What has it been like having your business and growing your business in the Corktown neighborhood, and what does it mean to you that your business is there, and that you said it's either the first or the second of its kind? I think first in Detroit, second in Michigan, you said. So what's
right.
So what's it like being in that neighborhood?
It's wonderful. I mean, if you know Corktown, you know that it's filled with amazing people, really interesting people who are doing great things. And then it's filled with many independently owned businesses. So the vast majority of the businesses in Corktown are independently owned. There's like a White Castle and a Marathon gas station, and now there's a Citizens Bank. But other than that, it's like all independently owned restaurants, shops. There's like a massage parlor. There's a lot of design firms, architecture firms, etc. So it's really cool to be an independent business owner, taking care of the needs of other independent business owners. We have a lot of small businesses that sign up with our group because let's say you're a restaurant with 25 employees. You're not mandated to buy health insurance by the Affordable Care Act, but you want to provide some sort of nice incentive for your employees. So a lot of those folks, pay the $55 a month for their employees to use our Plum Health service. And so we get a lot of business like that through our local friends and neighbors in Corktown, and that's been wonderful. It's also just great seeing Corktown change. There is $1 billion being invested into that Michigan Central Station site, plus there's probably going to be another $500 million or $1 billion invested in spin-off investment from other developers catering to those Ford Motor Company employees. So there's a luxury hotel going in down the street, the Godfrey. Right across from us, there's going to be a luxury hotel. People are investing in their homes, and more small businesses are coming online as there's more new builds and retail space available. So it's just exciting to be in a growing community in Detroit and in Michigan.
Yeah. Did you, going back a little bit to you starting Plum Health, at the time when you started it, did you have any experience or training in business or anything that would have helped you on that sort of side of things?
Okay, so 2 things. When I was like 11 or 12, I started my own lawn cutting business in the neighborhood, and people would pay me like $5 or $10 a week to cut their lawn. So talk about subscription models of care.
Yeah, nice.
There's one right there. And then I'm also a Boy Scout. I became an Eagle Scout, and I was pretty consistently one of the top salespersons for the troop. We would get like shipments of wreaths and greens for the holidays. So I'd go door to door and knock on people's doors and ask them if they would want to buy, wreaths from me. So that was a
no
really
popcorn.
Cool, no popcorn, man. That's the Cub Scouts, I think.
Oh, okay.
And then I really hit it big when I set up like a booth at the church, and just people would walk by and write down their order, and then I'd bring the wreaths to the church when the deliveries came through and just pass them out to people. Saved a lot of time on the door knocking. So. But okay. Other than that, not a lot of business experience. I think one of the ways that I was able to shore that up was to become a member of the Corktown Business Association. I also took classes at Build Institute here in Detroit. I took courses at Techtown, and then I was a part of the Motor City Match ecosystem, which had some good like technical talks and other like mentoring opportunities to learn how to bring your business up to the next level. And the other thing I did is after residency, after I was through reading a lot of the medical textbooks, I started reading like about 30 to 50 business books every year, which has helped me, stay sharp and learn a lot about business. And, things like Simon Sinek's Start With Why, or Gary Vaynerchuk, Crush It, or some of the sales materials from Grant Cardone, things like that help me shore up some of the weak areas that a physician would typically have, or help kind of shore up some of those blind spots that doctors would typically have.
Cool. Yeah. So I like that you Detroit is a big part of the business in the experience, because you personally, you went to Wayne State. Like myself, I went to Wayne State, but you went to Wayne State. You started your business here in Detroit. You got some resources from a lot of Detroit business, great resources like Techtown and Motor City Match and Build Institute, and now you're in Corktown. So yeah, that's really great. What are your plans for the future? Are you pretty focused on what you're doing right now? Do you want to expand your offering or your services? Do you want more clinics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a new dad. My son's about 10 months old. And
Congrats.
So I talked to my wife, and I was just like, I'm going to keep everything kind of like on an even keel for the first year of our son's life. And so that's felt really good, just to have like really consistency, not too much stress in terms of like growing the business and seeing how everything works over this year. I'm also trying to fill up, we have 3 doctors here, and we're trying to fill up our 3rd physician's practice. She's got about 100 patients left. So if you're really itching to get in on this, now's the time. So don't delay there. So I think once we get her full, and then once, this year elapses of, being a dad for that first year and really focusing on that, not that my focus is going to change that much, but I'd feel comfortable expanding into a 2nd location. There's some good opportunities, maybe like on the northern side of Detroit, like the, Avenue of Fashion, Livernois, or like the upper Woodward area, or maybe even like lower Oakland County or Canton, or something like that, somewhere where we could develop a regional footprint. So I think there's some really good opportunities. It's just kind of depending on like the right building, the right price point, and then also the right physicians to staff it, because you really have to get the right candidates. Not everybody can be on call like 24/7 for their patients, or available for a text message on a Saturday. Some doctors just like absolutely want to turn off, and it's hard to do that in this model. So it's kind of, you have to find the right person as well. So there's kind of a lot of moving parts there, and I really want to, it's kind of, those things have to align in a way for me to feel comfortable with making that next step. So that's probably coming in the next 6 months to a year, but still quite a bit of work to do before I feel comfortable with that.
Okay. Well, I want to, just before I give you the final word to add anything you may want to add, one thing that I wanted to ask you was to think a little bit about, from the perspective of maybe a med student or a physician, maybe even a young physician, who is very intrigued and interested in this model as well. Maybe they're listening to this and they like all the things that you're saying, and but maybe it just doesn't line up with their experience, or it just sounds like idealistic, or they don't know like what they could do, or how they could potentially begin to make some action in their life. Do you have any advice or anything you might say to them? Again, either a med student or a practicing physician.
Yeah, I think I know 50% of physicians experience burnout in a typical year. And so there's a really high rate of burnout in the typical clinical medicine. And it's not you, it's the system. It's a broken system that we as physicians are operating in the fee-for-service or insurance-based world. So you're not alone in feeling burned out. And there's hope, there's life, there's a regular schedule, there's meaningful work on the other side of fee-for-service medicine if you get into a direct primary care situation like this. And I know it's may be daunting to run your own business, but I say that if you're smart enough to get into med school, if you are, determined enough to finish residency, and if you're compassionate enough to choose a primary care specialty, you have everything you need to be a great direct primary care physician. Because writing a business plan is not that difficult. It takes about 4 to 8 hours, depending on how much time and intensity you want to put into it. And then there's some great resources available. When I did this, there were fewer, but now there's a lot. For me, I wrote 2 books on the subject. One's called Startup DPC, How to Start and Grow Your Direct Primary Care Practice. I also have a website with general information, blog posts, videos, and some paid courses called startupdpc.com. And then if you're just casually interested and you want to know more of the nitty gritty, I wrote a short book. It's really honestly 10,000 words, called Direct Primary Care, and just kind of walks through all the details on what I do on a daily basis. So with those resources, you should get a really good idea on what this is and if it might work for you. It's not for everybody, but if you kind of have the drive to maybe be your own boss, or maybe join an established direct primary care practice, because like I said, when I started, there was the second one in Michigan. Now there's about 14 doctors who are doing this in Michigan. And so now you might want to reach out to one of those doctors and say, I don't want to run my own DPC, but can I join yours? And they might be hiring. You might find yourself in a great situation. So there's a lot of opportunity now that this model is becoming more prevalent.
Thank you very much for that. That's very insightful. I'm sure a lot of people are going to appreciate hearing that. I really appreciate having you on. I think, I appreciate your outlook on things, and I thought that everything that I've seen and heard with Plum Health was very interesting, the way you guys approach things. So, which is why I wanted to talk to you in the first place about this. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Any final words you'd like to leave people with before we sign off?
Well, I got to plug Plum Health, plumhealthdpc.com. We're at the corner of Michigan and Trumbull in Corktown. You can call our office anytime, 313-444-5630. We're happy to help you with any primary care concern that you have, big or small. We help people of all ages and stages. We take care of infants, newborns, all the way through. Our oldest patient at one point was 101. So our oldest patient currently is 95 years old. So mostly we take care of young professionals, people in their 30s and 40s and 50s. But we do take care of people of all ages and stages. And I also make house calls if you're shut in, can't get out of the house.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Paul Thomas from Plum Health.
Thank you for having me, and have a great weekend.
And that was my conversation with Dr. Paul Thomas from Plum Health DPC in Corktown, Detroit. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to learn more about Plum Health DPC, check the show notes for some information on how you can connect. You can also connect with So-Called Discoveries through some information in the show notes. And if you are enjoying this podcast, please leave it a review, a rating, 5 stars, say some nice things, tell your friends about it, share it on social media, send emails, write letters, do whatever it is you got to do, get the word out and get people on board. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I hope that you learned something. Goodbye.